Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of my podcast today. I'm here with someone who inspired me in a big way and also inspired this book, this primer that I've written, which is really the basis for the workshop that we are going to present and host. But anyway, so I just want to say welcome to my daughter Jada, who's here today. Um, and hey, thanks for being here, Jada. What do you want to say to the listeners and the
It was a
viewers?
it was a long trek across the yard
Yeah,
to get here.
yeah. We're our house is just across the way. We just walked across the lawn and came over to this spot to do this. So anyway, I am excited that you actually came to be on camera because I don't think you like being in the limelight a whole lot.
No,
So,
that's okay.
so that was pretty
That's
cool.
okay. At least, hopefully, I'll just be heard more than I'm seen.
Ah, I don't
Hopefully.
know.
Oh.
I don't know. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about the book, which is actually, I guess, a big reason for wanting to meet today to talk about the book. Love Smart, a Girl-Dad's Icebreaker Book. Um, and so, anyway, and I know you got a chance to look it over a little bit and read some of it in the initial stages, right? And since then, I've done a whole lot of different things. But anyway, we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that in a little bit, some of the details. But I wanted to ask you, what's your view about what you read so far? What are your thoughts?
Man, I feel like I should have been studied and like reread my old notes that I wrote. I thought it was really good. I thought that you touched on really good topics and they had a lot of meat in them, especially if you fleshed out a lot of what you had already written. I bet it looks even better now. I like what we talked about, how you pivoted from writing with the target audience of people my age or girls my age, pivoting from that to dads and moms. I feel like that was a really good direction that you went, because I feel like reading through what I read through, it sounds like it's targeting like your age group more. Not that you can't speak to people my age, but it just, I don't know. There's more relatability. Is that a word?
Huh.
Is it? I don't
So
know.
it sounds like it had too much like boomer vibes or what?
Not necessarily, but it's just like I think that your age group would be like, okay, wait, I get this because I am going through the same thing. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Whereas like obviously a woman my age could read it, but I think, I don't know, your demographic would take more from it as a parent. I think.
Okay.
I don't know.
So you're saying it maybe appeals to dads more in that it would help them to come up with ways to come up with their own methods and points to introduce some of it's like a starter.
I think so. I think so. I think that you probably left out a lot of things you could have said that dads could relate to, because it was so written to like, oh, if you're going through this situation as a woman, or you're going through this relationship. But like, I think if you targeted more dads and you're like, if your girl is going through this or this, or go through, tween and then teen and then young adult, like that would be really interesting to read too.
Okay. That's good. That's good feedback. That really is. So, in terms of the title, when you hear Love Smart, you know, regardless of what comes after, which we established that it's really a book for dads to read and make notes and say, okay, I can initiate conversations that could be awkward, and here are some pointers that I try to share. but what do you hear when you look at the title?
Love Smart. Was that the original title? Because I feel like, was it not, or did it have a
No,
title before?
it had a title that was oriented toward the young
Right.
adult woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was. I like this title though. I think it's catchy, and I could see people. You know what I mean? Like, I could see it being thrown into conversation. Very easily.
Yeah.
I don't know if, like, hearing it, I don't know if that would be like my first thought that the book would be about. I think if I heard Love Smart, I wouldn't think of parenting. I would think of like a really, I don't know, like a relationship, like romantic relationship book, I guess. But I don't know. Not something that's super serious, but something, you know what I mean? Like, oh, if you're struggling with this little, portion of a romantic relationship, this is how to fix it, kind of thing.
Okay.
That's what I would think of. But I think it works though.
So the whole title is Love Smart, a Girl-Dad Icebreaker Book.
Right.
So what do you think of the title when you look at it? What does that say? Do you think a dad would look at it and think, oh, I guess this is a book about relationships? The icebreaker part, though, is where I was really trying to get the attention of the dad.
I think with the entire title, it sounds like it's still, like, it's obviously geared towards dads, but it sounds like it still has something to do with romantic relationships, I feel like. You know what I mean? Which it kind of does. Yeah.
And it does.
So it's like,
Yeah.
it's still in the realm of romantic relationships between that daughter and whomever.
Okay. So let's move on from that, and let me ask you this. Speaking about relationships and all that stuff, I mean, how do you, from your own experience with your dad, what does that look like? I mean, what do you think? Do you think dads are equipped, or do they understand enough of what a teen or a young adult daughter would be going through in the realm of romance? And how would you advise a dad? Well, let's talk about our own interactions about those topics.
About like relationships and stuff.
Right. So I guess you could grade your dad. So, things to sustain and things to improve.
Oh my. Trying to think. So, like, based on our experience, like, what I think is really good and what I think was, like, iffy, I guess.
Yeah.
Let me think. Man, I feel like there's been what kind of word am I looking for? Like, there's been a lot of random sporadic moments throughout teenager Jada where we've talked about relationships. I think let me start with things that should be sustained, actually. Let me think. I like that we, like, when we would talk about stuff, we kind of just, like, laid it out there, I feel. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't do it often, but when we did, I feel like there was a lot of honesty back and forth.
Okay.
The person I am, I hated the vulnerability part. Like, I was like, this is awful. I hate this a lot. You know what I mean? Because it's just, nobody likes being vulnerable with anything. The part I wish there was, like, more of, I guess, was the frequency. Because, like, and then I didn't really know how to start those conversations. And I think before I started dating, you were very open about, like, this is what you should look for, and this isn't, you know what I mean? Look for somebody who's like this, and make sure this, make sure that. But I think I didn't really know how to interpret that. Like, when I was hearing it when I was like 13, 14, I was like, okay. And then going into dating, I didn't understand it until, like, the relationship ended, and I was like, oh, that makes more sense now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there were a lot of aspects that were really vague or broad that were kind of maybe left out just because I wasn't old enough to hear. But then I kind of wish I did, because it like almost like snuck up on me, and I was like, oh, well, I didn't realize that. You know what I mean? That's not like your fault. That's just kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I wish I knew then what I know now. But that's just kind of, that comes with experience that you can't really, you know what I mean, be told. Sometimes you have to like just learn on your own. I don't know.
Yeah. And I try to address that in the book as well, because I get exactly what you're saying with in terms of like we do all the right things as dad, like I mean we say all the right things as our daughters are much younger,
Yeah.
and like you said, and it's kind of broad because you recognize that your daughter's too young to really understand. If you
Right.
use analogies and metaphors, they won't understand. But then, like you said, it sneaks up on you because then your daughter goes from being, I don't know, 13 or even younger when you take them to the father-daughter dances like we did, and you open the doors for them to kind of show them how a gentleman should treat you as a lady. You go on daddy-daughter dates, and all these things you do all the right things, but then it sneaks up on you, one, in that you guys grow up, and then all of a sudden you're 16 or 17, and it's like, oh, okay. And then the second thing, and I really hopefully address this well, and we could address this more in the workshop, is like you don't know how your daughter's gonna process things romantically. There's no real playbook for that when you as the daughter encounters romance with somebody else. I mean, there's
Right.
no. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I don't know how to prepare a young girl for what she's gonna feel herself in a relationship,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how to respond to that.
Yeah. I mean, the dad wouldn't know, and then I think the girl herself wouldn't know until you know. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. Like it
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense until you go through it, and then it's like,
Right.
oh, okay. But
It's like what dad said to me. How do I translate what he said and showed me to what I'm going through right now? But then that begs the question. Then, well, what's the point? I mean, what can young adult and teen girls take into a relationship that they've seen modeled by their dad? Is it like, well, it doesn't really matter what dads do, you have to experience it for yourself? How do you reconcile that?
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that there were a lot of things that you did say and drilled into me that like I took into relationships, and it was I think it was maybe like a God thing, like where circumstances would occur in relationships, and then it wasn't like it was like a bad circumstance. It was just like, and you're like, is that like an alarm? And then I would be reminded of something you'd say or you had said, and then be like, maybe that's what he meant. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I would take that advice, or that I don't know, I guess advice that you had given me, and be like, okay, well, this is going to be where I go from here based on that. And I would sit on it for a long time, or I had to, like think about, okay, this is what he said. This is what's happening. I feel like I'm, you know what I mean? Kind of comparing and reconciling that, and then moving on based on what you had said.
Okay. So with that said, do you think you and even other young adult or teen girls get good advice about love and romance and all that stuff?
I mean, I think I was given good advice. I don't know if a lot of them are given good advice. I think we have a more open relationship with a lot of more communication between us than a lot of dads and daughters do, if I had to guess. And just based on people I've talked to, and even guys and girls that I know, like it's like, oh, well, I don't know, you and your parents have a lot more conversation, a lot more talking goes on than I have,
Yeah.
So I guess like I feel that dads should probably just be more open to communication. Like even though it's hard, I think that the parent, that's like a really big responsibility, because I think as a daughter, like I'm sure other daughters feel this way. It's like it's hard to, as the younger person, growing up, go to your parent, even if you feel comfortable with them. It's like, I don't know if I can take this to them. The same way we do with like with God. Like you're like, oh man, I have this problem, but I'm gonna keep this to myself because I don't know how to take it to them, even though you know that they could help you, you know? So I think it's helpful when the parent goes to the kid and, you know, asks like, how is this? Or like, and makes it clear, like, I don't know, you're not in trouble. I'm just asking because I care, you know? Or, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
No, that's good. So, and I know, of course, you know, you talked about, you know, interacting with God and so on and so forth. So that makes me think of, you know, of course, we're like Christian family, walking in the faith, walking and living out our faith and all that stuff. And so, what do you think of the dating landscape, the dating environment in the church? I mean, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I think, I mean, there's like, I guess the broad sense of church and then churches, and I think it maybe depends on denomination and what church you're at. But I think in the grand scheme of Christian culture with dating, I think that there needs to be more communication in that sense as well. And I'm always really glad when there are more sermons and more, I don't know, workshops, I guess, or small groups that have to do with relationships. And obviously in Christian culture, it's like, hey, this is not your identity and this is not all that matters. And you shouldn't just be, you know, putting a ring on it if this is your first rodeo with a boyfriend. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily have to be like that. But I like when things are talked about, and maybe, I mean, it's good that it's encouraged though, because obviously families are good. And when families happen and they bring kids into the world, it's like you know, there's more light in the world and stuff like that. But I think that it's shied away, or people shy away from talking about relationships a lot. And I don't understand why, or asking questions about how is this going, or how is this going, or maybe couples not feeling comfortable talking to, I guess, elders or people who are already married about their relationships because they feel like they'll be judged or they don't know who to talk to about it. I think that, and I feel like I've seen that a lot with my peers, because it's like, because I myself, I'm like, well, I guess I shouldn't ask about that, or people won't talk to me about their relationships, and I won't talk to my peers about my relationship. You know what I mean? And then you're kind of just, I mean, I have like a couple friends, I'll be like, or maybe just like one, but I think a lot of people kind of just are left as an island. And I think, based on my observation, a lot of times when people, even in Christians, when they get into relationships, they just become their own little bubble. And then they kind of don't prioritize their friendships as much, which is not healthy, especially when you're only in a dating relationship and not married, I think. But
wow, that was a lot. It sounds like
that was a lot.
Like,
sorry.
No, I mean, that was good in the sense that you've really thought about this, and
I have
you had
before,
a
yeah.
lot of you know, you did a lot of reflection.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So what are some of the things that you would do? Like if you were the decision maker somewhere in some church somewhere, what are some of the things you would do to encourage, you know, remedying some of those things?
I think, I guess it would depend on what tier of staff or, you know what I mean, authority I would have. But I think it would be great if, obviously in like a small group where you have a more intimate group of people, obviously ask about them and their walk and their own life. But then if they're in a dating relationship, make it open, be like, how is this going? How is your heart? Are you guarding your heart? How is this? Like, be really honest and make it an open floor, like, or even like purity and all these things. Like, I think that it would be really great. And even if people don't want to talk about that, I mean, if you ask, the worst they can say is no, I guess. And then I think also not even that often, but maybe, once every 6 months, kind of having a couple of sermons, either in young adults or in the main service, that have to do with relationships and what the point of marriage is. Because I don't think people talk about that enough in church. It's kind of just like, yeah, when you're married, you're committed and all this stuff. But it's like, but what is it? It's ministry with a couple. It doesn't even have to do with having the children. It's like, people need to understand what marriage is, I think, because I myself, I think, have had conversations with guys, and it's just like, do we really have the same idea of what this is or why we're getting married? You know what I mean? Or why we're, aiming for that.
Yeah. That's
I
interesting
don't know.
because, and I don't remember if you got this far in the the initial stages of the book before I actually finished it, but I actually addressed that in a book about the purpose of marriage, because I think, or maybe you did, I don't remember, but because I think it's such an important topic to kind of to frame it well, and I think I probably had my own ideas about marriage even after having been married for several years. And what really got my attention with this whole marriage thing, and I included it in the book, was the whole thing with the family that we know. And for their privacy, I didn't use their real names, but two couples that were friends, and each of them lost their respective spouse. So I read about that, and they remarried each other. So basically, the friends, the remaining widow and widower, I just kicked that. the widow and widower got married. Right. And sitting at that wedding, that ceremony, is where it really hit me. I mean, I was like, it was just 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. The purpose of marriage is not what just the romantic side of, we'll fall in love, get married, and live forever.
Do
because
whatever,
for
be
one,
romantic.
we don't live forever.
Right.
But that brought it home, because that person's married, their spouse died, and they remarried. And it's like, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm really communicating how impactful that was to discover that marriage has a really specific purpose, as designed by God. You know, the bride of Christ and all that stuff. There's much in there.
The symbolism is crazy.
Yeah, but I try to unpack that a little bit in the book as well. So it's interesting that you brought it up. But you also said something about, I don't remember exactly what you said, but it made me think of this question about, especially in the church environment. A lot of times I think Christians believe that if I'm in church and I meet a person that goes to church, that professes Christ, well, then, there's a level of safety and security there. So what are the green flags and red flags, even as young adults date other Christians?
Like in a church and stuff.
In a church.
Well, man. I mean, I guess not only myself, but like I've heard of other people getting into a relation, or, going all the way towards marriage with people, and then they're professed Christian and all these things, but then they're like not the person, you know what I mean? That you're like, whoa, that's not Christ. Like, I'm not seeing the fruits at all. I think that's really hard. I think I've come to discover, I think time is important. Because you're getting to see consistency with a person. You know what I mean? So obviously, like, if you see green flags and these other people who have seen green flags and they're like, okay, well, this person's good. Let me, you know what I mean? They love God. They're showing me this, so let's get married. But I feel that you can't know that. I mean, sometimes like you and mom, a mom knew, and God was like, this is your husband. And she's like, okay, like, and then 2 months, it's like you're married, and you've been married 4 5?
Four.
24
4, 5.
years, you know?
25 in next February.
Yeah. But then some people, I think for the majority of people, I mean, obviously fasting is something that people don't talk about enough, but fasting and prayer, and then consulting other people who have known them for longer, which I feel like I don't or didn't do as much as I should have. And then allowing there to be, more than 6 months of time to like really know the person and see if they're going to continue to be the person that you've seen for, the first 6 months. Because especially after even 3 months, you can see really who a person is. Yeah, I feel like, consistency is very important to see if somebody is who they say they are. Green flag specifically, I mean, prayer. Like, you're not going to see somebody's prayer life in their privacy, but you can see how somebody treats prayer with you. And if they bring a conversation to Jesus often, you're like, okay, well, you actually have the Lord on your mind. You know what I mean? If you're going to bring that into conversation, obviously that's something that matters to you. I think the way they talk about other people, because if somebody's going to slander this person, who's to say they're not going to slander you? I think that's kind of something to look for. I don't know any, I guess, specific red flags, but I think those are some good, green flags to look for.
I mean, some of the red flags I talked about in the book, and I think we talked about this maybe. I'm glad you mentioned about the time thing, because I remember harping on that. Like, you have to give the relationship time.
Yeah.
But I talk about some of the red flags. One, or it could be green flag. Okay, let me just say what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So serving in church. I believe that it's a red flag if the person professes to be a Christian, but there is no ministry going on. And ministry doesn't have to be like preaching, teaching, Sunday school. It doesn't have to be all that stuff. But I think it needs to be something that is helping to support the work of the church. It's helping to promote the mission of whatever that local body is doing. So it could be serving on a hospitality team, even being a greeter, working in the AV stuff, tech. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a green flag when a young man is doing that, and it's a red flag that if they're not, and it should be. You should investigate that. You know what I mean? So anyway, what do you think of that?
I think that's true. Yeah. I guess I don't want to be a hypocrite in that sense, because sometimes, I mean, I do serve in church, obviously, like with team track and during young adults, and then on the worship team sometimes. But like, I think maybe sometimes I just admittedly like forget, and I'm like, oh man, when's the last time I was on the greet team, or when's the last time I, you know what I mean? But if I'm serving at young adults, I think I excuse myself if I don't serve on.
But you have other
Sunday.
avenues too, like you serve with us when we go around places to lead worship, so that's something. Because I know someone, their family owned a business that kind of volunteered at church with that business to serve food, and they helped.
Like there was service,
food. And that's that was their claim to service. I don't know if I was that impressed by that. Like, if that, I don't know if that helped me check that block, but
right. I think it really depends.
Yeah.
So like, I guess for myself, I'm like, well, even if you're doing this, is that like enough? But then you don't want to get legalistic, like, oh, am I doing enough? Because like, it needs to be like a heart posture, obviously.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get so legalistic with yourself, like, oh, I haven't served, I need to serve this many times. It needs to be like genuine, and I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I guess it depends.
It depends. Right. So random question, like way out of left field.
Okay.
Soda or pop?
What?
You should see your expression. So random.
I think from like age 2 to like 12, I said pop, but then people were like, pop? You mean soda? So I don't know at this point. I
Yeah.
kind of avoid saying it.
Yeah, I don't know why I asked that.
I'm like soda pop, both. You know, put them together.
Put them together. But that was so random.
Yeah.
But you did say something about fasting and praying. Maybe I'm
Oh.
just hungry, and I thought of
Man, I should have eaten.
Yeah.
Food, for sure.
But you talked about fasting and praying and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and I noticed you're reading this book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know, and the viewers and listeners might be interested to know too, like, what are some of the books that you have read through your journey of dating and all that stuff, and why did you pick the books that you did, and what did
Yeah.
you get from reading them?
Okay. I definitely, man, the only books I was really reading in my last relationship were like school books, I guess. I wasn't really reading for like my own, I guess, I don't know, self-help or for my own leisurely reading or whatever. But after that ended, I kind of was like, okay, I really want to learn more about myself and learn more about God and all these things. And I kept hearing about this book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I was like, what is that about? Like, because everybody kept bringing it up. I don't know if it was TikTok or somebody in person. I don't remember. Maybe Taylor portrayed us. I don't know. I don't know if we're supposed to say names. That's not like anything bad.
Yeah.
But anyways, shout out to her.
Yeah. Taylor got a shout out.
Yeah, there you go. But it's a really great book about. Am I supposed to tell about the book or just that I read it?
I mean,
Okay.
whatever. You can
I don't
tell a
know.
little bit about what
Okay.
it was about.
I really liked it though. It was kind of about. I mean, it was very Christian based. It was about a pastor, who was kind of just like, I don't know, in a cycle of just doing the things. Just got into a rhythm of doing whatever, going through a routine without really being locked in with God, I guess. And then he realized, like, okay, this is not. I feel like a tug. Like, this is not where I'm supposed to be at. So, he took like a hiatus or something, and then just like really, he dives into like what hurry looks like, and how it's bad for your spiritual health and your physical health, which is really interesting, and how like rest, and what rest means for a Christian, and all these things. And I don't know, I took a lot from that book, and it taught me a lot, and I was like, that's so good. Like, I need to stop being in, you know what I mean, in this cycle of just going and going and going. It's such a great book. I want to read it again. And then recently I've been reading, trying to think if there was one in between. Oh, well, when I started, I don't know, my new relationship. I don't want to talk about that relationship because that's awkward. But I just learned things about myself where I was like, I don't think I'm like, this isn't me. Like, coming from the past into now, like this, how I'm treating my partner is not me. Like, this is weird, and it just was different. And I learned a little bit in psychology about attachment theory, and I was like, I wonder if that has something to do with it, because I'm just acting off and being like kind of standoffish and like keeping him in arm's length, which there's a difference between this and guarding your heart, I think. So I started reading a book called Attached. I don't remember who wrote it, but that one is really good and has taught me a lot about myself and like my toxic tendencies based on like my attachment and everything like that. It's really interesting. And then that one's not Christian based, but it's very good and scientifically based and stuff. And then I'm reading this book called Pray for Him, which it's like change him, and then change is marked out and it says pray for him. You've seen it, but yeah. And that one's kind of just like a daily like prayer journal, like focusing on different things about yourself and about your partner, like what you can be praying for. But that one's really good. It kind of forces you to be humble and be like, well, I don't want to be praying this for my partner if I don't have this down as well. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like praying for him and praying for myself in the same sense.
Cool. No, thanks for sharing that. And I think young adult women listening and viewing would actually, maybe make a note of the titles Jada just mentioned, and see what you think about those books. They didn't pay us. They're not sponsoring this this episode or anything. I just want to, but I wanted to go back a little bit before we get to where we wrap up today. Like your childhood and just recounting. Jada's an army brat, so she moved around a lot and so on. So just recounting some of the highs and lows, and just talk a little bit about that.
Just generally,
and
what about
how those experiences maybe impacted you in a negative or a positive way.
Yeah, let's see. I think in a positive way. I think the moving around a lot of states kind of helped me be well adjusted or adjust better to new things, which I don't love change, but it's like, okay, well, this is what's going on, so I just gotta get used to it. You know what I mean?
I don't think I knew that.
Really?
That you didn't love change.
No, I don't think I do. Maybe I've just changed as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
Like, I like changing things up in my own routine, but like when big changes happen, I get really like nervous and like, oh my gosh, this is new. But I just kind of have to gaslight myself into thinking it's not a big deal.
Okay.
And then I think maybe a negative of, in the same, I don't know, on the other hand of the same moving around and everything. I think with like relationships, as in like friendships and stuff, I think like making solid friendships and keeping them and like taking them seriously for myself has been different, just because it's like you move and then somebody and you're really close with them for a year or 6 months, and then you move away and you're like, oh, I guess we don't talk anymore. Even if I, as my 11-year-old self, would try, it's like they kind of just fell off, and it was like weird. So then I think that's affected my friendships now, where I'm like, well, if they stop talking to me, or it doesn't really matter. But that's so awful, because it's like friendship is important, especially in young adulthood. But I kind of struggle with like solidly making, and maintaining a friendship, and then also like genuinely missing them, and like, it's so strange, or like making a connection and keeping it, and then kind of finding the difference between acquaintances and friends that should be closer, and whether it's worth it almost, which I think that's important, to not just, let your heart get attached to a friend. But
you've kept up with at least one friend over the years.
Yeah, just one, but she's different. She's an exception.
Yeah, how so?
Man, I don't know. I think she was a good friend for me and proved herself to be a good friend. And I think it was mutual during like a tough point when I wasn't talking to anybody else about it. And we just connected on such a deep level that like, and we understand each other in a way like nobody else has ever, besides like you and Gideon, like nobody else has really ever understood me in that level. And we understand each other so well. I'm like, she's probably like my best friend, and I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what's different about that, I guess, but that's probably the reason why.
So you said me and Gideon. Mom doesn't listen to these, I don't think, but you didn't say mom.
No,
so
okay, I am so close with mom, especially after like, I don't know, halfway through my teenager years. I'm like, what? I don't know mom very well, so we just got bonded. But I don't think she understands. I don't think we understand each other. I think we understand, you and I understand each other. And I think Gideon and I understand each other. But I don't think that mom and I understand each other. Doesn't make us not close.
Yeah.
But
okay. That's interesting.
I know, right?
Wow. Okay. So that's interesting. I wonder
Really?
what mom would say. Yeah, we should do another episode with
Oh
mom.
my gosh,
and
that would
just
make me
sit
feel
down.
so bad. I love mom. I think I understand her better than she understands me.
Yeah.
Which is okay. But I think, yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. So, all right. So, yeah, I'm still thinking of that. So, two things. Like, okay, one, what was the most impactful experience or conversation with mom
Oh
So I'm
man.
gonna
Okay.
force you to talk about
Okay.
that, and
Oh
then
my
I'll ask
gosh.
you about with dad.
Out of all of them, wow.
Well, there's probably several, but
Yeah.
pick one of
Okay.
the top.
The most impactful, or what was the other thing you said? Or okay,
Yeah,
like pivotal or something.
pivotal.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I think one thing mom is so good at is like whenever I'm genuinely coming to her with like an emotion and she knows that it's serious, she is very good at like meeting me where I am. You know what I mean? Like she's extremely compassionate and empathetic. So I think in the moments where I've been like, you know what I mean? I just like I'm like this or like even if it's not words, like I feel like she's a feeler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I guess I can't think of a specific
Yeah.
moment like that, but whenever I come to her about those things, and it's not just like me and my anger or just venting, because she's very good at listening to venting as well. And
Yeah.
she's like, yeah. But in the moments where I've been like, this like really sucks and it hurts and this and that, and she'll be like, yeah, and then she won't even need to say anything. She's just like, you can see like whether it's tears or whatever, she just feels with you, and you're like, wow, you know what I mean? That's a very Christ-like thing of her. I think that's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah. With you, I'm trying to think. I feel like with you, it's been more like, I don't know, if my brain is like in a knot or something, or it's like this, and I like talk to you and you're like, yeah, because, and then you'll take the knot and you'll be like, yeah, so you feel like this, and you like, you know, you're undoing it as you're, and I'm like, you're right. You're right. That is how I feel, you know, and I think that's really,
Wow.
I guess I didn't take like specific conversations.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is just my broad interpretation of you guys
Yeah.
as like parents, like your strengths, I guess.
That's where I went too. Like
Oh.
that's the picture I saw, and it's like it just I don't know. It's so important for people to have both parents,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
both, you know, the way they like mom is a feeler, like you said.
You guys are so different,
Yeah,
but in a
and
great way.
Yeah, she's more emotional for sure. I mean, I have emotions and empathy and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
I'm more of a I don't address things from an emotional
No,
place.
you're a figure
a
outer
lot.
in
Yeah.
a logical way, an
Yeah.
analytical way.
Yeah, I don't know. Emotions have their place, but I don't know. I don't feel like emotions solve problems.
No,
You
they kind
know?
of create more problems, honestly, sometimes.
But emotions are healthy.
Very.
And I think what I'm saying is a mom and a dad can provide those two support ladders, steps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Foundations, all of those. So for me, I don't know. I'm sure we've had like impactful and deep conversations because we tend to have good conversations and stuff like that. But I think, especially over the last few years with, you know, your recent romantic experiences, was the conversation about the little illustration that I came up with, you know, that I now am using. I think I told you this as the basis for the workshop that we're gonna host, you know, because I think the reason why that was so impactful for me was because after you'd experienced this negative thing that you did, and I was praying a lot, but I wasn't seeing a change. And this is some of the things that we could flesh out in the workshop, you know, with dads. But anyway, there needs to be a certain amount of patience as you pray, and faith and all that stuff, and open conversation. But I know I had quit trying to talk about it for like a week or something. I don't know if you remember. And I was at the shop with mom. So we own a bakery. And so I was helping mom in the bakery at that point. But for like that whole week, your mom was saying, you need to just sit down and talk with Jada. I was like, I've already talked with
This
Jada.
is before that thing.
Yeah. I've already
man.
talked with Jada. I've already whatever. And mom would just be like, okay. And then a few days would go by, and then I'll say something, and she'd be like, "You just need to sit down and talk with Jada." And so,
Yeah.
dads, listen to the moms, listen to your wife sometimes.
It's peacemaker.
Yeah. And then I eventually I just left. It was a Saturday, and I just said, "Okay, I'm gonna go talk to Jada," and I just
Huh.
it was a spur of the moment
That's so funny.
decision, and then I came to the B&B. You remember? I
That
mean,
was
you
so
were there.
awkward.
Was it
It
awkward?
felt awkward for me.
Right.
It had been awkward for like
See?
a month and a half though. Like it had
Yeah.
been weird. Yeah.
It was that long? Oh man, yeah. It was.
Yeah.
I was like a week. Okay, it was longer than that.
I don't know. It'd been
Yeah.
weird.
you know and I think that's another part of the reason I was wanting to, like, there needs to be like an icebreaker moment. And maybe conversations are awkward even before it gets to the point it did with us, with this situation, with this kid. But anyway, that was the moment we sat down and we chatted. And like I needed to explain my reservations, because I think up until that point, like, it wasn't really clear, right?
Yeah.
Like, you didn't really, it was like, okay, dad doesn't approve of this person because of this thing. It's like you were still working through reconciling
I
something.
think I don't know. You probably don't want me to overshare, or like I was just gonna explain I don't know. I think in my head it was like, I think it was reconciliation, because it was like, because I hold your opinion to such a high regard.
Yeah.
Like, even though it probably didn't look like it, it was like, I always told myself, I was like, if my dad doesn't approve of this person, I'm not going to marry them. And I kept thinking about that. I was like, dude, like, I was like, this is gonna, I don't know. And then, but then it's like, you care about this person and you care about your dad
Yeah.
at the same time. You're like, what do you do? So then in my mind, I just wanted it to like work, and I
Yeah.
wanted it to like become peace, but
Yeah.
that's where my mind was, and I just like wanted to wait for it, but it was like,
That is so good. And it was in the waiting that it got really awkward, because I'm
Yeah.
like, I've already said my piece.
exactly, and
but
then neither of you guys were going
right.
to
But you
reconcile.
still needed to come to that place
Yeah.
on your own. And that's important. That's important, dads. But anyway, but sitting down with you, and I don't know, it had to have been a Holy Spirit thing, where I drew that really simple. I'm sure other people have seen that and drawn that and all that stuff. But that illustration about
the
the
triangle thing.
which is now the Love Smart values map. That's what it is now. The Love Smart
Nice.
values. Is it family values map? No, values map. Anyway, that is, and it's, it's going to be trademarked and registered and all that for that workshop, because after that conversation is when I felt like you were like, oh, I see, I understand now. I don't know, maybe that was just in my mind.
I think I saw things that I think it was more like, for me, it wasn't necessarily the illustration. I mean, a little bit it was the illustration. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I could see that. I think it was more like maybe that conversation we had at Big Whiskey's, and then that conversation sitting down at the Airbnb where you were asking me like specific like questions, where my mind literally was like, you don't, like, you have an answer for these. Like, this is a good point.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. So I think, and I think if there are dads out there, and a part of this whole conversation I wanted to have with Jada was to kind of introduce some of the things we talked about, like the book, the workshop, and stuff like that. And I would love to be able to flesh out some of those things in a workshop. But if you want to grow and connect and show, just show up. Because if you notice from this conversation, Jada and I had a really good relationship over the years, but it got to a point where certain things needed to be talked about and so on. And it kind of like got to a climax. And if you're wondering, because I know we've kind of talked around the fringes, because we really want to respect people's privacy and we don't bash people. And that's why we're keeping names out and so on. But Jada did have a negative experience, and she was engaged to marry this person, and then she discovered that, okay, this is not the one, you know. But we need to be able to just break the ice about even hard things, you know. Anyway, that's what this book, that's what I try to do in this book, is to introduce these topics where dads could be like, oh, maybe that is a way to introduce this particular aspect of my daughter's relationship. And you guys, daughters grow up, like, we see you guys, even with our sons. I have a son as well, and I'm praying that he just exhibits green flags, no red flags. But we forget that, like, we still see our kids as 7, you know, over the years. And really, when we're confronted with their young adulthood, it could almost slap us in the face and make us and shake us out of that. Okay, wow, this person is now 17,
Like grown.
you
Yeah.
know, and then 20, 21. And anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. But hey, you could grab a copy of the book that I've written, Love Smart, a Girl-Dad Icebreaker Book. And it's a primer to introduce and set the foundations. You could just use that and have conversations with your daughter. But it's also a primer for the workshop that we'll host. And anyway, you can grab that at trevorliverpool.com/new book. And it's at the really low price right now, introductory price, like $4 or something. You know, it's a small book, but just check it out. And also, while there, you scroll down to the bottom, and I have an interest form for the workshop. And it's just an interest form, and it does have a price attached to it, but it's not set in stone yet about, even if we'll charge, we'll probably just do the first one free of charge. What I'm trying to get at is if you would just tell me, hey, yes, I would be interested in attending a workshop like that. All right. So, well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening in. If you're listening at the usual places, just audio only, we had a chance to sit down, and we also have this. We're gonna have this on YouTube if you wanted to watch the interaction between Jada and me. And until next time, you know, we'll sign off for now. Hey, and tell us if you want us to do more of these. I think Jada could host her own podcast. You're
What?
really good at this. Yeah,
It's
you have
just
a lot of
talking.
good things to say. Yeah, so
I'm a
maybe
good
we'll do
yapper.
some more.
You know me.
All
I can
right.
talk.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care.